By the time Emma Carter heard the gunshots, the hospital had already gone silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that made nurses stop mid-step. The kind that made doctors look up from charts. The kind that made every machine beep sound too loud. Outside the emergency entrance of St. Aurelia Medical Center, rain hammered the pavement in silver sheets. Ambulance lights flashed red across the wet glass doors. Somewhere beyond the storm, tires screeched against the curb. Then came the shouting. Not paramedics, not police. Men, many of them, hard voices, heavy footsteps. Orders spoken too calmly for the amount of blood that followed. Emma looked up from the trauma chart in her hands, just as the emergency room doors burst open. A stretcher rolled in fast. Around it came a wall of black suits. Armed men, not security guards, not cops, armed men with earpieces, soaked coats, and eyes that scanned the room like they were deciding who lived long enough to speak. Every nurse froze. One of the residents stepped backward. Emma didn't. She saw the patient first. Male, late 30s, blood loss, severe. 3 visible wounds. 1 to the lower abdomen, 1 near the ribs, 1 high on the shoulder, leading through a torn black dress shirt. His face was pale, but his eyes were open. Sharp, dark, terrifyingly aware. Most patients came into trauma, fighting pain, or slipping into shock. This man looked like he was memorizing the room. A tall man in a black coat stepped forward. "We need the best surgeon in this hospital." Emma moved toward the stretcher. "You have one?" The man looked her over once, as if weighing whether she was old enough to be trusted with a life that clearly mattered to people who carried guns. Emma met his stare without blinking. "Move," she said. The word landed with enough force that even the armed men paused. Then the patient turned his head toward her. For 1 second, through blood and rain and chaos, their eyes met. His gaze was cold, not panicked, not pleading, cold. Like pain was an inconvenience, not a threat. Emma leaned over him, pressing gloved fingers against the wound near his ribs. "What's your name?" One of the men answered. "Don't ask that." Emma didn't look at him. "I wasn't talking to you." The patient's mouth curved slightly. Barely. Almost not a smile. "Matteo." The room shifted. One of his men stiffened, almost imperceptibly. Emma noticed. A fake name, then. Fine. She had operated on victims who lied before. "Matteo," she said, cutting open his shirt with trauma shears. "You've lost a lot of blood. I need you to stay awake." His eyes remained on her face. "I've survived worse." "Good," Emma said. "Then survive quietly." Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. Oh, surprise. Around them, the armed men watched as if no one had ever spoken to him that way, and continued breathing afterward. Emma didn't care. The monitor screamed. His blood pressure dropped, and the emergency room exploded into motion. 2 large bore 4s. Type and cross. Call or 2. Page vascular. Tell anesthesia I need them now. A young nurse hesitated near the wall of men. Emma snapped her gaze up. Everyone who is not medical staff leaves this trauma bay. No one moved. The man in the black coat stepped closer. "We stay with him." Emma's voice turned colder. "Then he dies with an audience." The silence sharpened. The man's jaw tightened. But before he could answer, the patient spoke. "Do what she says." 3 words. Calm. Weak. Absolute. The armed men obeyed instantly. That was the first moment Emma understood. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just important. He was the center of their world, and possibly the reason people were already dying outside hers. The operating room was bright, sterile, and merciless. Rain battered the windows beyond the frosted glass. Thunder shook the building. Somewhere downstairs, Emma knew security was overwhelmed by men who didn't belong in a hospital, but inside the OR, none of that mattered. There was only the body on the table, only blood, only time, only the thin, brutal line between life and death. Emma worked with controlled precision. The abdominal wound was worse than it looked. The bullet had torn through tissue, clipped a vessel, and left internal bleeding that would have killed him before dawn if they had arrived 5 minutes later. 5 minutes. That was all standing between the most feared man in Chicago and a body bag. Because by then, Emma knew. Everyone in the hospital knew. Whispers traveled faster than blood work. The man on her table wasn't Matteo. His name was Dante Vescari, the ghost of Chicago, a mafia boss whose name appeared in federal files, police briefings, sealed investigations, and rumors no one said too loudly. A man accused of controlling half the city through private clubs, waterfront unions, luxury real estate, corrupt contracts, and fear. A man no prosecutor had ever managed to convict. A man who now lay open beneath Emma's hands. Human. Bleeding. Mortal. It should have frightened her. It didn't. Not during surgery. On the table. He was not a criminal empire. Not a legend. Not a monster. He was a patient. And Emma Carter had never lost a patient because of a reputation. Clamp. The scrub nurse placed the instrument in her hand. Emma worked without pause. The monitors dipped. Anesthesia called out numbers. The room tightened. For 3 seconds, Dante's heart rhythm faltered. Then 5. Then 7. Emma's voice stayed steady. Push another unit. Suction. I need visibility. The resident, beside her, swallowed hard. Dr. Carter, do not panic in my oar. Her hands never shook. Not once. After 20 minutes of controlled chaos, the bleeding slowed. After 40, it stabilized. After 90, Dante Vescari was still alive. When Emma finally stepped away from the table, sweat marked her hairline beneath the surgical cap. Her back ached. Her gloves were stained deep red, but the monitors held. Strong enough. Stable enough. Alive. She exhaled once. Only once. Then she turned toward the observation window. Through the glass, beyond the sterile white light of the operating room, Dante's men stood in the hallway like shadows. One of them looked relieved. Another crossed himself. The tallest one, the man in the black coat, stared at Emma with something close to disbelief. Emma removed her gloves. He'll live, she said. No one spoke. Then Dante, still barely conscious beneath anesthesia, turned his head just enough for his eyes to find her. Impossible. He shouldn't have been aware enough, but he was. His voice was rough. You're very calm for someone surrounded by men who could kill her. Emma looked down at him. And you're very talkative. For someone I just stitched back together. His eyes held hers. Even half dead, the man had presence. Dangerous. Heavy. Impossible to ignore. You saved my life, he murmured. Emma stepped closer, lowering her voice. I did my job. No, he said. His eyelids drifted lower. You did more than that. Then the anesthesia finally pulled him under. Emma stood there for a second longer than necessary, watching him. Not because she wanted to, because something about the way he looked at her felt like a door opening into a room she had no intention of entering. A dark room, a dangerous one filled with secrets. Then she turned away and walked out. By morning, St. Aurelia Medical Center was surrounded. Black SUVs lined the private entrance. Men in suits stood at every exit. Hospital administrators whispered behind closed doors. Police arrived, asked careful questions, and left with fewer answers than they wanted. Emma returned to rounds like nothing had happened. That was her gift. Compartmentalization. Blood stayed in the operating room. Fear stayed outside the patient chart. Emotion waited until after the shift. At least, that was what she told herself. But by noon, everyone knew Dante Vescari had asked for her. Not the chief of surgery. Not the hospital director. Here, Emma ignored the first message, then the second. By the third, her department chair appeared beside her at the nurse's station with the nervous expression of a man who had already decided inconvenience was safer than refusal. "Emma," he said carefully. "Mr. Vescari would like to speak with you." Emma continued writing orders. "He's stable?" "Yes." "Breathing?" "Yes." "Then he can like whatever he wants." The chair lowered his voice. "This is not a normal patient." Emma finally looked up. "That's exactly the problem." He sighed. "Just 5 minutes." "No." "Emma." She set the pen down. "His medical care will not be affected by whether I visit his room to make him feel powerful." The chair looked toward the end of the hall, where 2 of Dante's men stood near the elevator. "It may affect other things." Emma understood the warning. She hated that she understood it. After a long pause, she picked up the chart. 5 minutes. Dante Vescari's recovery room looked less like a hospital room and more like occupied territory. 2 guards outside the door, one at the window, another near the bathroom. Fresh flowers someone had removed before they could be delivered. Blackout curtains partly drawn. Machines humming around the bed. And Dante, sitting upright despite the fact that he should have been unconscious for most of the day. His skin was still pale, his shoulder bandaged. An IV ran into his arm, but his eyes were alert, focused, too alive. Emma stopped just inside the room. "You're supposed to be resting." "So they told me. You should listen." "I rarely do." That explains the bullet wounds. For the first time, the guard by the window glanced at her like she had just stepped too close to a cliff. Dante did not smile, but something changed in his eyes. "You always speak to patients like that?" "Only the difficult ones." "Am I difficult?" "You're surrounded by armed men in a cardiac recovery wing. Necessary precaution. In a hospital, especially in a hospital." Emma moved to the monitor, checking his vitals. "You're stable. Against medical advice. Apparently awake." "Pain? Manageable." That wasn't an answer. It was the only one you're getting. She turned to him. "Pain isn't weakness, Mr. Vescari." The room went still. His real name hung between them. Not whispered, not avoided. Spoken. Dante watched her carefully. Most people avoid saying that name. "I'm not most people." "No," he said quietly. "I noticed." Emma hated the way his voice lowered on those words, as if noticing her meant something, as if he had already placed her somewhere in his mind, somewhere private. She checked the incision site with clinical focus. "Your wounds are clean. No sign of complications. You'll need rest, antibiotics, monitoring, and less arrogance." His gaze stayed on her face. "Is that a prescription?" "It should be." He looked almost amused now. "Almost." Emma stepped back. "You'll recover. If you don't do anything reckless. I'll try." "You won't." "No." At least he was honest. Emma headed for the door. His voice stopped her. "Dr. Carter." She turned. Dante studied her with a stillness that made the room feel smaller. "You didn't ask who shot me." "That's not my job." "No curiosity?" "My curiosity ends where my survival instincts begin." A faint shadow crossed his face. "Good." Emma frowned. That sounded like approval. It was. "I didn't ask for it." "I know." The exchange should have annoyed her. It did. But beneath the annoyance was an awareness she didn't want. He was dangerous. Not loud dangerous. Not theatrical. Worse. Quiet. Dangerous. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice because entire rooms had already decided to obey him. Emma opened the door. Then he spoke again. "Thank you." She paused. This time, there was no command in his voice. No amusement. No power. Just 2 words. Low. Controlled. Almost human. Emma looked back. For a fraction of a second, she saw past the name. Past the guards. past the reputation. Then she forced herself to remember what he was. "You're welcome," she said, and left before the room could feel any smaller. 3 weeks later, Emma had almost convinced herself Dante Vescari belonged to another life. A storm, an operating table, a dangerous man who survived because she was good at her job. Nothing more. He left the hospital after 8 days. No farewell, no note, no flowers, no dramatic goodbye. Just an empty room, a signed discharge order, and a hallway suddenly free of men in black suits. Emma preferred it that way. Her life returned to normal, or as normal as trauma surgery ever allowed. She worked double shifts, argued with insurance representatives, drank terrible hospital coffee, visited her younger brother Noah at his apartment every Sunday. Noah was 22, brilliant, stubborn, and alive because modern medicine had repeatedly refused to give up on his heart. Emma had raised him more than anyone else had. Their parents died when she was 19. Noah was 12. Since then, Emma's life had been an endless negotiation between ambition and responsibility. Medical school, residency, debt, hospital politics, Noah's treatments, emergency surgeries, bills she never fully understood how she managed to pay. Somehow, every time things became impossible, a grant appeared. A foundation helped. An anonymous donor covered what insurance refused. Emma never questioned miracles too closely. She was too busy surviving them. That Sunday evening, Noah caught her staring out his apartment window at the rain. "You're doing the doctor thing again." Emma blinked. "What doctor thing?" "Looking like you're mentally diagnosing the skyline." She smiled tiredly. "I'm just thinking." "About work?" "Always." "About the mob boss?" Emma's head snapped toward him. Noah grinned. "Oh, come on. Half the city heard Dante Vescari got shot. You shouldn't say that name like it's gossip. You saved him." "I saved a patient." "Same thing?" "No." Noah studied her. "You okay?" The question softened her. Emma sat beside him. "I'm fine." "That means no. It means I'm tired." "You're always tired." "Then maybe I'm consistent." Noah smiled, but his expression sobered. "You don't always have to be the one keeping everyone alive." Emma looked away. "Yes, I do." He didn't argue, because both of them knew she believed it. The second shooting happened on a Thursday night. Rain again. Chicago again. Blood again. Emma was leaving Centralia after a 30-hour shift, walking through the side entrance toward the staff parking garage. Her phone buzzed. A message from Noah. "Don't forget dinner Sunday." "I'm cooking." "This is not a drill." Emma smiled. Despite exhaustion, she was typing a reply when she heard the first shot. A sharp crack cut through the rain. Then screaming, Emma turned. At first, she saw only confusion. People running. A security guard collapsing near the ambulance bay. Glass shattering near the revolving doors. Then another shot. Closer. Pain exploded through her side. The phone slipped from her hand. For one impossible second, Emma didn't understand what had happened. She looked down. Blood spread across her scrubs. Dark. Fussed. Too much. Her knees buckled. The world tilted sideways. Someone screamed her name. She hit the wet pavement hard. Cold rain splashed against her face. Above her, the hospital lights blurred. She tried to move. Couldn't. Tried to breathe. Couldn't do that properly either. Footsteps pounded toward her. More shots. More screaming. Then a voice cut through everything. Low. Furious. Unmistakable. "Get her inside." Emma's vision flickered. For a moment she thought pain had dragged a memory from the wrong night, because that voice did not belong here. Not again. Not to her. But then, a shadow knelt beside her. A black coat, dark eyes, a face she had tried very hard to forget. Dante Vescari. Rain ran down his jaw. His hand pressed against the wound in her side. Heart, controlled, saving pressure. But his expression was not controlled. Not anymore. Emma had seen men afraid before. Husbands outside operating rooms, fathers beside ambulance doors, soldiers trying not to cry. But she had never seen fear look like violence until Dante Vescari looked down at her bleeding on the pavement. "Stay with me," he said. Emma tried to speak. Only a broken sound came out. His hand moved to her face. Not gentle exactly. Not rough either. Desperate restraint. "Look at me." She did. His eyes held hers like an order and a plea at the same time. "You do not close your eyes." Rain struck his shoulders. Blood warmed his fingers. Around them men moved, shouted, fired back. But Dante did not look away from her. Not once. Emma's breathing grew shallow. "Dante," one of his men said urgently, "we have to move." Dante slid one arm beneath her shoulders. Pain tore through her body. She gasped. His jaw tightened. "I know," he said, voice low. "I know. But you're going to live." She wanted to tell him he couldn't promise that. She knew better than anyone. She was a trauma surgeon. She knew the look of a body deciding whether to stay. But her mouth wouldn't work. The last thing Emma saw before darkness took her was Dante Vescari lifting her into his arms beneath the hospital lights, his shirt soaked with her blood, his face carved with a kind of terror no one else in Chicago would have believed. And then the world disappeared. When Emma opened her eyes again, she heard machines first. A steady beep, the soft hiss of oxygen, distant footsteps beyond a door. Her body felt heavy, wrong. Pain waited beneath the medication, dull but patient. She blinked against the low light. Hospital ceiling, recovery room, private wing. She was alive. The realization came slowly. Then all at once, Emma tried to move and immediately regretted it. A nurse appeared at her side. "Easy, Dr. Carter. Don't try to sit up." Emma's throat felt raw. "What happened?" "You were shot." Memory returned in fragments. Rain, blood, Dante. His hand on her wound. His voice telling her not to close her eyes. Her pulse jumped. The nurse noticed. "Your surgery went well." Emma swallowed. "Who operated?" "Dr. Levin and Dr. Shaw." "Good hands. Skilled hands." She forced herself to breathe. "How long?" 3 days. Emma closed her eyes. 3 days. "Noah, my brother, is safe." Emma opened her eyes. The answer came too quickly, too prepared. "What does that mean?" The nurse hesitated, then glanced toward the door. Emma followed her gaze. Through the narrow glass panel, she saw them, men in black suits, standing in the hallway. Not hospital security. Not police. Dante's men. Her heart began to pound. Why are they here? The nurse didn't answer. Because the door opened, and Dante Vescari walked in. He looked nothing like the patient she had stitched back together 3 weeks earlier. He wore a black suit now. No tie. White shirt open at the collar. A healing bruise marked his cheekbone. His face was unreadable. But his eyes were worse than memory. They were fixed on her like he had been waiting for the exact second she came back to the world. Emma stared at him. "You're not supposed to be here." Dante stopped beside her bed. "I know." "Then leave." "No." The answer was quiet, immediate, absolute. Anger flickered through her exhaustion. "This is a hospital." "Yes. You can't just occupy a recovery wing." "I already did." She looked past him toward the hallway. "How long have you been here?" Dante didn't answer. The nurse quietly left the room. Emma's gaze returned to his. "How long?" His voice was calm. "Since they brought you out of surgery." Her breath caught. "That was 3 days ago." "Yes." "You stayed here for 3 days." "Yes." "Why?" For the first time, something moved across his face. Not softness. Not confession. Something darker. More controlled. More dangerous because it was clearly not under control at all. Because someone shot you outside my hospital. Emma blinked. Your hospital? Pause. Then he said, that was not what I meant. But something in his expression told her it almost was. Emma's mind sharpened despite the pain. Was I the target? Silence. Too long, don't you? His jaw tightened. I don't know yet. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one. Emma stared at him, fear slowly threading through the medication. You know something. I know the shooter wasn't random. The room seemed to shrink. Emma tried to sit up again. Pain punished her instantly. Dante moved, before thinking, one hand reaching toward her shoulder to stop her. Then he froze. His hand remained inches from her skin, almost touching. Not touching. The restraint was so sudden and visible that Emma noticed. So did he. Their eyes met. A strange silence formed between them. Close. Tenser. Unwanted. Dante lowered his hand. You'll tear your stitches. Emma looked away first. I'm a doctor. Then act like one. Her gaze snapped back. He almost smiled. Almost. But the expression vanished quickly, because something heavy stood between them now. The fact that he had stayed. The fact that she was alive because he had carried her inside. The fact that armed men were guarding her door. The fact that Dante Vescari, the most feared man in Chicago, looked like he had not slept in 3 days. Emma studied him more carefully. His eyes were shadowed. His shirt was clean, but his cuffs were creased. A faint line of dried blood remained near one knuckle. Hers. Someone else's? She didn't ask. Not yet. Where is my brother? Safe. I want to hear that from him. You will. Now. He's being watched. Emma's blood chilled. By who? By men I trust. I didn't ask for that. No. You can't put guards on my family. I can. Don't. They knew your shift, he said. The words cut through her anger. Emma went still. Dante's voice dropped. They knew which exit you used. They knew what time you left. They knew where to position the shooter. The machines beeped steadily beside her, too steadily, as if her body hadn't just realized something terrifying. That doesn't mean I was the target. No, Dante said. But it means someone inside this hospital helped them. Emma stared at him. The hospital. Her world. Her sanctuary. Her battlefield. Her home. Someone inside had helped put a bullet in her. Before she could respond, the door opened again. This time, a man in an expensive gray suit stepped inside. Hospital director Jonathan Vale. Polished, composed, concerned in the practiced way of powerful men who had attended too many press conferences. Emma, he said warmly. Thank God you're awake. Emma tried to answer, but Dante turned first. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vale stopped just inside the doorway, his smile tightening when he saw Dante standing beside her bed. Mr. Vescari, Director. Neither man offered a hand. Neither looked away. Emma felt it immediately. Hostility hidden beneath manners. Vale cleared his throat. I came to check on my surgeon. Dante's voice remained smooth. She's resting. Vale's eyes flickered. Just briefly, but Emma caught it. My surgeon. Not our colleague. Not Dr. Carter. My surgeon. It had always sounded normal before. Now, it didn't. Vale looked at Emma. We're all praying for your recovery. The board is devastated. Emma forced herself to focus. Was anyone else hurt? A pause. 2 security guards. 1 critically. Her chest tightened. I want updates. Of course. Dante said nothing, but his silence had weight. Vale's gaze drifted back to him. I'm sure Dr. Carter needs peace. Hospital security can handle the situation from here. Dante looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, Can they? Vale's expression didn't change, but something sharpened behind his eyes. Emma felt the tension pass between them like a blade. Then Vale smiled. "We appreciate your concern." "No," Dante said. "You don't." The room went silent. Vale's smile disappeared for one heartbeat, then returned. "I'll come back later." "Don't," Dante said. Emma looked at him. "Don't." Vale's gaze shifted between them. Something calculating entered his expression. Then he nodded once. "Rest well, Emma." The door closed behind him. Emma waited until his footsteps faded. Then she turned to Dante. "What was that?" Dante stared at the closed door. "A man pretending to worry." "You suspect him?" "I suspect everyone." "That's not an answer." His gaze returned to her. "No," he said. "But it will be." Emma should have felt relieved, protected, safe. Instead, she felt the floor of her life beginning to crack beneath her. Because Dante knew too much. About the shooter, about the hospital, about Noah, about her. And when she looked at him, she saw something he was trying to hide. Not guilt, not exactly. Recognition. Like the danger surrounding her was not new to him. Like he had been watching shadows gather around her, long before the bullet found her. Emma's voice came out quieter. "What aren't you telling me?" Dante looked at her. For the first time since she woke, he seemed almost unwilling to answer. Then the door behind him opened slightly, and Marco, his head of security, leaned in. "Boss." Dante didn't look away from Emma. "What?" Marco's expression was grave. "We found the shooter." Emma's pulse spiked. Dante's eyes hardened instantly. "Alive?" Marco hesitated. "For now." The room seemed to darken. Emma's fingers tightened around the blanket. Dante turned toward the door. "Where?" "Underground parking level." He was trying to leave through the service tunnel. Dante took one step. Emma's voice stopped him. "If you kill him, we don't get answers." He paused. Slowly, he looked back at her. Their eyes met. The surgeon in her knew what came next. The woman in her feared it. The man in front of her wasn't a myth anymore. He was real, and he was capable of terrible things. But for reasons she did not understand, he listened. After a long silence, Dante said, "Then I'll make sure he gives answers first." "That's not what I meant." "I know." He walked to the door, then stopped. Without turning around, he said, "Lock this room behind me." Emma's throat tightened. "Why?" His voice lowered. "Because whoever tried to kill you may not be finished." Then he left. The door closed. The lock clicked, and for the first time since waking up, Emma Carter realized the bullet had not been the end of the nightmare. It was only the beginning. The room felt colder after Dante left. Emma stared at the locked door for a long time. The pain medication dulled the wound in her side, but it did nothing for the unease growing inside her chest. Someone had tried to kill her. Someone inside the hospital had helped, and somehow Dante Vescari had known the danger was coming long before she did. That realization bothered her more than the bullet, because people like Dante didn't protect strangers. People like Dante calculated, planned, controlled. Nothing about the way he had looked at her outside the hospital made sense. Not the fear, not the desperation, not the fact that he had abandoned everything to sit outside her room for 3 days. Emma was still thinking about it when Noah arrived. The second he entered the room, she knew something was wrong. Not with him, with the situation. 2 of Dante's men escorted him. 1 remained outside. The other stood near the elevators, watching, always watching. Noah immediately crossed the room and hugged her carefully. The motion nearly made Emma cry. Not because it hurt, because she hadn't realized how afraid she had been. "You scared the hell out of me," Noah whispered. Emma forced a smile. "I'm still here. Barely." His voice cracked slightly. That alone terrified her. Noah almost never showed fear. Not after everything he'd survived. Emma pulled back. "Are you okay?" He hesitated. "Too long." "What?" Noah looked toward the hallway, then back at her. "I've had bodyguards for 3 days, Emma closed her eyes. Of course. Don't. Yeah. She rubbed her forehead. Noah, listen to me. If they make you uncomfortable, they don't. Emma blinked. What? They don't. His answer surprised her. One of them drove me here. And? He knew where I went to elementary school. Emma frowned. What? He knew the name of my third-grade teacher. A strange chill crawled down her spine. Noah. He knew what surgery I had when I was 14. Emma stared at him, slowly, carefully. What exactly are you saying? Noah swallowed. I'm saying this doesn't feel like protection that started 3 days ago. The room went silent. Emma didn't want to hear that, because part of her already knew. 3 floors below, in a private conference room converted into a temporary command center, Dante stared at photographs spread across a long glass table. Crime scene photos, ballistics reports, hospital security footage, names, faces, timelines. The shooter was dead, not because Dante wanted him dead, because someone silenced him first. A sniper round through the skull before interrogation could begin. Professional, clean, planned. The message was obvious. Someone powerful was hiding. Marco stepped beside him. No usable prints. Dante remained silent. No communication devices. Silence. No financial trail. Still silence. Marco knew that look. Dante only became this quiet when rage was becoming difficult to control. The shooter didn't matter. The people behind him did. Someone had targeted Emma. Someone had known her schedule. Someone had known exactly where she would be, and every trail pointed back to St. Aurelia, a place Emma trusted, a place Dante trusted no one. His gaze settled on one particular file. Hospital director, Jonathan Vale. Clean record. Perfect reputation. Too perfect. Men like Dante survived because they understood one truth. Nobody was that clean. Nobody. 2 days later, Emma was discharged, against her wishes, and entirely according to Dante's, not officially. Officially, the doctors recommended temporary relocation due to security concerns. Unofficially, every recommendation came from people too intimidated to argue with Dante Vescari. Emma discovered this when she arrived at the location chosen for her recovery, a private lakeside estate outside Chicago, hidden among pine forests, protected by gates, cameras, and enough armed personnel to start a small war. The moment she stepped out of the SUV, she turned toward Dante. No, he looked almost amused. No, I'm not living here. You are. I'm not under house arrest. Neither am I. Emma stared at him. You own the house. Exactly. You see how that's different? Dante stepped closer. Not enough to invade her space. Just enough to make her aware of him. The people who shot you are still alive. I'm aware. They know where you work. I'm aware. They know where your brother lives. The anger left her immediately. Dante noticed. Of course he noticed. You can hate this place all you want, he said quietly, but you're staying. Emma looked away first. That annoyed her. The estate was beautiful. She hated it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a frozen lake. Fireplaces burned throughout the house. Staff moved quietly through hallways, lined with artwork worth millions. Everything felt luxurious and isolated. Exactly the kind of place a mafia boss would choose. Exactly the kind of place Emma never would. Yet days passed. Then, a week, and she slowly began noticing things she wasn't supposed to notice. Like how Dante left every morning before sunrise and returned after midnight. Like how he always checked her security updates personally. Like how he somehow knew which tea she preferred, which books she liked, which music she listened to during surgery. The details became impossible to ignore. One evening she finally confronted him. The confrontation happened in the library. A massive room filled with dark wood shelves and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking falling snow. Dante sat alone near the fireplace reading reports. Emma entered without knocking. His eyes lifted immediately. Always aware. Always watching. "We need to talk." He closed the file. "That usually means trouble. You know too much about me." A pause. Then, "Do I?" "Stop." The word came sharper than intended. Dante remained calm. Emma stepped closer. "You know my favorite tea." Silence. "You know Noah's medical history." Silence. "You know where I spent residency." Still silence. Her pulse accelerated. "Why?" For the first time, Dante looked away. Just briefly. That scared her more than any answer, because Dante Vescari did not avoid eye contact. "Eva." "Why?" she repeated. The fire crackled softly. Snow drifted beyond the glass. Then Dante finally spoke. "I had reasons." "What reasons?" Another silence. Longer this time. Then, years ago, your brother needed treatment. Emma froze. Every nerve in her body went still. Dante continued. His voice remained controlled, but something deeper moved beneath it. Insurance refused coverage. Emma felt the room shift. You couldn't afford it. Her heartbeat became deafening. Noah nearly lost access to a specialist. Dante's eyes met hers. And then someone paid. Emma couldn't breathe. The anonymous donations, the grants, the miracle funding, every impossible moment, every time disaster should have happened, someone had stepped in. No. The word escaped before she could stop it. Dante said nothing. Emma took a step backward. No. Another step. No. Because if this was true, everything changed. Dante remained seated, almost motionless, as if he knew exactly how dangerous this truth was. "It was you." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Emma saw it. In his eyes, in his silence, in the way he looked, almost uncomfortable being thanked for something. "You paid for Noah's treatment." Still silence. Tears burned unexpectedly behind her eyes. Not because of gratitude, because of confusion, because nothing about it made sense. Why? Dante finally stood. Slowly, deliberately. His voice was quieter than she'd ever heard. "Because I could." "That's not an answer." "I know." "Then tell me the answer." For several seconds he said nothing. Then, "I saw you once." Emma blinked. "What?" "Years ago. The room seemed to narrow around them. You were leaving a hospital." His gaze remained fixed on hers. "You were carrying your brother because he couldn't walk after treatment." Emma remembered. Barely. One exhausted evening years ago. One anonymous moment. One impossible memory. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." The honesty of the statement hit harder than it should have. Emma felt suddenly vulnerable. Exposed. Sane. Dante stepped closer. Not touching. Never touching. Just close enough that she could feel the heat from the fireplace behind him. "You looked exhausted." His voice lowered. "But you kept smiling for him." Emma couldn't speak. "I didn't know your name," he continued. "I didn't know who you were." Another step. "I just knew you were carrying the weight of the world and pretending it wasn't heavy." The air between them became dangerous. Not because of violence, because of emotion. Rough. Unexpected. Unwanted. Dante looked away first, as if revealing that much already felt like a mistake. Emma stood frozen, trying to process the impossible truth. The most feared man in Chicago had been part of her life, long before she knew he existed. Hidden, silent, watching from a distance, helping, without ever asking for credit, without ever introducing himself, without ever expecting anything back. That realization terrified her more than his reputation ever had. Because monsters were easy to understand. Kindness wasn't, especially from a man like Dante. That night neither of them slept. Emma couldn't. Questions multiplied too quickly. How long had he known about her? How much had he seen? Why her? Why continue helping for years? Across the estate, Dante stood alone on the balcony, overlooking the frozen lake. Snow drifted through darkness. The city lights glowed faintly in the distance. Marco approached quietly. She knows. Dante nodded. And, for the first time in years, Dante looked uncertain. A dangerous thing for a man like him. I don't know. Marco almost smiled. You crossed a line years ago. Dante stared into the snow. Maybe. You stopped being objective the moment you paid the first hospital bill. Silence. Then, I know. The admission surprised even him. Because it was true. This wasn't fascination anymore. Wasn't curiosity. Wasn't gratitude. Because she saved his life. Those had been lies, he told himself. The truth was older. Much older. And far more dangerous. Dante Vescari had been quietly obsessed with Emma Carter long before either of them realized it. The difference now was simple. Now she knew. And somewhere inside St. Aurelia Medical Center, the person who wanted her dead was beginning to realize she was still alive and preparing to finish what they started. 3 nights later, everything fell apart. The attack came shortly after midnight. Emma woke to shouting. Not loud. Not at first. Just enough to pull her from sleep. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then, she heard gunfire. Close. Too close. The sound exploded through the estate. Glass shattered downstairs. Someone screamed. Emma sat upright instantly despite the pain in her side. Her bedroom door burst open. Marco appeared, weapon drawn. Get up. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. What happened? They found us. Another gunshot echoed through the house. This one inside, much closer. Marco crossed the room. Move. The estate transformed into chaos. Men rushed through hallways. Security alarms screamed. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the building. Emma barely reached the corridor before another explosion shook the entire structure. The floor trembled beneath her feet. Smoke drifted through the lower level. Whoever attacked had come prepared. This wasn't intimidation. This was extermination. Marco pushed her toward a hidden staircase. Keep moving. What about Dante? Marco didn't answer, which terrified her more than any response could have. At that exact moment, Dante stood in the middle of the main foyer. Blood already stained his sleeve. 3 attackers lay motionless across the marble floor. More were entering. Professional killers. Military-grade weapons. No insignias. No warnings. No demands. Only death. Which told Dante exactly what he needed to know. This wasn't a rival family. This wasn't business. This was cleanup. Someone was trying to erase Emma, and anyone protecting her. His phone vibrated. A message appeared. Unknown number. She knows too much now. Dante stared at the screen. For 1 second, then his eyes hardened. Finally, a mistake. The first real mistake. Because now whoever was hiding had revealed something important. They were watching, very closely, and that meant they were afraid. The attack lasted 12 minutes. 12 violent minutes that left half the estate damaged. When it ended, 6 attackers were dead. 2 escaped. And Dante had something he hadn't possessed before. Afazzi, one of the surviving attackers, had been captured alive. The interrogation happened before sunrise. Emma never saw it. Dante made sure of that. But she saw him afterward, and that was enough. Because when Dante returned to the estate, something had changed. Not physically, emotionally. The calm mask he normally wore had cracks. Small ones, dangerous ones. Emma found him standing alone beside the frozen lake. Snow drifted around him. The sunrise painted pale gold across the ice. He looked exhausted. Not from the fight. From what he had learned. Emma stepped closer. What happened? Dante didn't answer. Immediately. When he finally spoke, His voice was colder than she'd ever heard. "We found the person responsible." A chill moved through her. "Who?" Silence. Then, Jonathan Vale. The world stopped. Emma stared at him. "No." Dante looked at her. "I wish that wasn't true." The hospital director. The mentor she trusted. The man who helped shape her career. The man who visited her hospital room. The man who pretended to care. Emma shook her head. "No. He arranged the attack." "No. He arranged the first one, too." "No." Dante stepped closer. His voice softened, just slightly. "The shooter worked for him." Emma couldn't breathe. The memories came flooding back. The concern, the kindness, the trust. Every conversation suddenly felt poisoned. But why? The question barely escaped. Dante's jaw tightened. Because of Noah. Emma froze. Again. The name landed like a knife. What does Noah have to do with this? Dante's eyes darkened. Everything. The truth emerged slowly, like a nightmare, unfolding piece by piece. Years ago, Jonathan Vale had secretly participated in illegal medical research, experimental procedures, financial fraude, patient manipulation. The operation generated millions. Records were buried. Witnesses disappeared. Careers were destroyed. Then one case threatened everything. Noah Carter, a teenage heart patient whose treatment records contained evidence linking Vale to the entire operation. The records should have been destroyed. They weren't. Someone saved them. Someone hid them. Someone kept copies. Years passed. The scandal remained buried. Until recently, when Noah accidentally discovered the files among archived medical records. He didn't understand what he had found. But Vale did, and panic followed. The hospital director spent months trying to recover the evidence. When that failed, he chose a simpler solution. Eliminate the problem. Noah, Emma, anyone connected to the records. The first assassination attempt targeted Noah. Emma stepped into the wrong place at the wrong time. The bullet hit her instead. Everything after that became damage control. Emma felt physically sick. The room seemed too small, too quiet, too cruel. So he tried to kill us. Dante nodded. Yes. Tears filled her eyes. Not from fear, from betrayal. Again. First the system, then the hospital. Now the man she'd trusted. Emma laughed once. A broken sound. I have terrible judgment. No. Dante's voice was immediate. Firm. Absolute. You trust people. She looked at him. That's not always a strength. His gaze never left hers. It is. For a moment, neither moved. Neither spoke. The snow continued falling around them. Soft. Silent. Beautiful. Everything the world wasn't. 2 days later, Jonathan Vale disappeared. Officially, unofficially, everyone knew he was running. Federal investigators launched warrants. Police searched properties. News channels exploded with speculation. But Dante knew something everyone else didn't. Vale wasn't escaping. He was preparing. Cornered men became desperate. Desperate men became dangerous. And dangerous men made mistakes. The final mistake came 48 hours later. A private medical transport helicopter vanished from radar over Lake Michigan. Inside were stolen records, financial evidence. Everything needed to expose Vale. Dante immediately understood. It was bait, and he walked directly into it. The confrontation happened at an abandoned lakeside hospital scheduled for demolition, a forgotten building overlooking freezing water. Perfect for hiding, perfect for dying. Emma never intended to go, until Noah disappeared. The call came shortly after sunset. Unknown number. Noah's terrified voice. Then silence. Emma didn't even think. She took the phone directly to Dante. His expression darkened immediately. Stay here. No. Emma. No. The argument lasted less than 10 seconds, because both knew she wasn't staying behind. Not this time. Not when Noah was involved. The abandoned hospital felt haunted. Dark hallways, broken windows, flooded corridors. Moonlight spilled through shattered glass. The building smelled like dust and forgotten memories. Dante's men secured the perimeter, but Vale anticipated that. The trap triggered the moment they entered. Gunfire erupted from multiple floors. Chaos followed. Bullets shattered walls. Glass exploded overhead. Men screamed. Returned fire echoed through empty hallways. Emma became separated during the confusion, exactly as Vale intended. She found Noah first, bound inside an abandoned operating room. Alive, terrified, but alive. Relief hit so hard her knees almost gave out. Then the door opened. Jonathan Vale stepped inside, holding a gun. The smile on his face looked nothing like the man she once trusted. Emma. She felt physically ill. Let him go. Vale laughed. You still think you're negotiating? The conversation that followed shattered every remaining illusion. Vale admitted everything. The fraud, the murders, the cover-ups, the attacks. Years of corruption hidden beneath prestige and reputation. And now, he intended to erase the last witnesses. Forever. The gun lifted, pointing directly at Emma. And for the first time in months, she genuinely thought she was about to die. Then the wall exploded. Literally exploded. Concrete shattered. Smoke filled the room. The door flew inward. And Dante appeared through dust and debris, like something pulled from a nightmare. Or a legend. Blood stained his suit, his face, his hands. His eyes found Emma instantly. Always Emma. Vale fired. Dante moved. The shot missed. Chaos erupted. The fight lasted seconds. It felt eternal. When it ended, Vale lay on the floor, defeated, broken, finished. Federal agents arrived minutes later. The evidence was recovered. The scandal became national news. And Jonathan Vale disappeared into the justice system he spent years manipulating. The war was finally over, but the emotional damage remained. Several weeks later, Emma stood on the rooftop garden of St. Aurelia Medical Center. The city stretched endlessly below. Chicago glittered beneath a sky painted gold by sunset. Everything looked normal. Almost. Noah had recovered. The investigation ended. The threat was gone. For the first time in months, peace felt possible. Footsteps approached behind her. She didn't need to turn. She already knew. Don't you? He stopped beside her. Close. Not touching. The familiar distance they always maintained. Neither speaking. The silence felt different now. Not tense. Not fearful. Comfortable. Finally, you can go back to your life, he said quietly. Emma smiled. Can I? Dante looked toward the city. You should? The words hurt more than expected. Emma studied him. The man who stayed outside her room. The man who carried her through gunfire. The man who protected Noah. The man who quietly helped her family long before she knew his name. The man who crossed every line he created for himself. For her, don't you? His eyes met hers. And Emma finally asked the question she had avoided for weeks. Why me? The question lingered between them. Dante looked away, toward the horizon, toward the fading sunlight. When he finally answered, his voice sounded almost vulnerable. A rare thing, a dangerous thing. Because every time the world gave you a reason to become cruel, his gaze returned to hers. You chose kindness. Emma felt tears burn behind her eyes. Dante stepped closer, just once. No barriers, no distance, no excuse. You saved my life. Emma smiled softly. You saved mine. Something shifted. The final wall, the final defense, the final lie. Dante reached for her face, slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. His hand settled gently against her cheek. Warm. Careful, reverent. For a man feared by an entire city, the touch felt astonishingly gentle. Emma leaned into it, just slightly, and that was all it took. Dante kissed her, slowly, softly, like something precious. Not possession, not obsession, something deeper, something earned. When they finally pulled apart, neither spoke, because neither needed to. The city lights flickered below. The wind moved gently around them, and for the first time since that stormy night in the operating room, everything felt still. 6 months later, St. Aurelia Medical Center unveiled a new cardiac research center, dedicated entirely to helping families who couldn't afford treatment. Anonymous funding, massive investment. No public explanation, no official donor. But Emma knew. So did Noah. Across the dedication plaque appeared a single inscription. For those who keep fighting. No signature, no name, no credit. Exactly the way Dante preferred. Standing beside Emma during the ceremony, he looked entirely unimpressed by the attention, which made her smile, because some things never changed. And maybe they shouldn't. The future remained uncertain. The city remained dangerous. Enemies would come. Challenges would follow. But when Emma slipped her hand into Dante's, he held it without hesitation, without fear, without letting go. And somewhere deep inside Chicago, rumors already began spreading. Not about the Mafia Boss, not about violence, not about power, but about the woman he refused to leave behind. The woman who changed everything. The woman who made the most feared man in the city stay.